This is the Six Figure Chick Podcast, Episode 7, featuring Yexandra Diaz, spoken word artist, community advocate, and doula. Please welcome Yexandra Diaz. Hey, buckle up, queens. It's time for the Six Figure Chick Podcast, the one and only podcast made to teach Black women like you how to make a six-figure income. Whether you are a high-performing woman, professional, new business owner, author, speaker, or even a mom, you're sure to pick up golden nuggets of actionable advice when you listen to the Six Figure Chick Podcast. Each week, we will deliver hard-hitting, no-nonsense, keep it real topics about being a Black woman in America and the
girl, hush your mouth.
we deal with. We're going to talk about this
and that,
and we're going to talk about everything else that has held us back. No more, queens. It's time to hear from real people
with real life
and real talk. So grab your best girlfriend and get ready for this ride.
Do you have micros or sister locks?
These are micro dredge.
So I did my first set of micros this weekend on somebody.
Did you? You do hair too? Lord help.
Yes. I mean, I started off only with my daughters, and she has like regular good size, like medium size locks. But over the years, I would do friends here and there. So a friend wanted micros done, and I did them this weekend. It was so long and tedious.
Yeah, I have 490.
Yeah, she has about 500.
Wait, am I recording?
Nope.
Yes.
It says you are.
Oh, it is?
I
Stop.
said it. We would start and be like, oh shoot, we're not even recording. Okay. You
All
too
this
can have a
time
podcast.
I'm being recorded.
Hi, I'm Cherie Griffith Dunn.
And I'm Nyilka Wright-Smith.
And this is the Six Figure Chick weekly podcast to help you win at work, in your business, at home, and succeed at life. The year of the Black woman is shaping out to be one powerful year. We are excited to bring enriched content about Black people, especially Black women who are pioneers and trailblazers of this country. Today, we will talk about getting our affairs in order for Black, Latina, and Native women who have had some trouble in this area. We want to thank you all for listening. We appreciate your feedback and ratings on our podcast. We do this because we know how important it is to have a voice for Black and Latino women, especially now.
And please do not forget to smash that like button and subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube channel, The Six Figure Chick. Actually, take away it's only Six Figure Chick, okay? We really need your support. We really need your help. So please like our video. There will be experiences, or there you will also be able to experience our virtual green room.
Yes, and we have a lot of fun. And I'm so excited to be here with you all today because our golden nugget is truly a phenomenal woman. And when you hear about this woman and you hear about the things that she's doing in our community to shape not only young minds, but minds of all ages, helping them get their life in order. I mean, this woman takes us to another level of why we need to get in the game and get in the game now. So let me introduce to you Yexandra Diaz. She's born in Chicago, a New Haven raised. She is a community activist and an oral narrator who uses the art of spoken word as a vehicle for messages that raises awareness around social and environmental injustice. Versed in issues that plague impoverished inner city communities. Yex utilizes her voice as a tool to bridge gaps and build ties all over community as an all over community advocate, Yez wears many hats, ranging from a birth doula and environmental educator to a facilitator, developing and delivering varying trainings such as cultural humility, responsiveness, and creative writing workshops at the local college. By marrying thought with speech to convey the pain and plight of marginalized communities of color in an unequivocally vivid and enlightening fashion, her mighty pen and tongue brings awareness to social and cultural atrocities. Yez looks forward to continuously serving her community. And we are so happy to have Yez with us. Girl, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It is my pleasure.
Wonderful. So I know we have some questions queued up that Ayoko wants to ask you about what it is that you do and how you do it. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you've been working on recently and what you're looking to do going forward? And you guys, and she might have a treat for us. She might do a little spoken word if you continue to like.
Yes, absolutely. So, right now, currently, I'm working on many different endeavors. All of them, very similarly aligned. Again, my business started off 4 years ago as a birth doula business. So I would serve pregnant moms, families, and children during pregnancy, childbirth, and the postpartum period. I got into this field because I feel an extreme due diligence to my community and to give back in whatever capacity that I can give back in and whatever resonates with me. And Black women specifically die at a rate of 8 to 9 times more than any other ethnic group in this nation. As a developed country, we are on the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to healthy birth outcomes, especially in comparison to supposedly underdeveloped countries. So a lot of these health disparities are preventable. And this is what I started off with. The environmental education is something that has slowed down because I left my more formal workplace to pursue my business full time. And just about a year ago, well, a little over the 1 year anniversary, my mother passed away. And because of that, I decided to become a dev doula. Initially, just received some compliments and some guidance from the funeral director and the funeral owner about the way that I handled things, and that I should get into this business somehow. And lo and behold, you know how the technology universe works. They hear and then they provide. So I get on my phone and now I see ads about dev doulas. I have never seen this before. I never knew what a dev doula was before. And now I'm learning, okay, this is a niche that I have. This is a need within the community that needs to be met. And I honestly took a year off. I took a sabbatical to deal with my grief, to deal with it in a healthy and a proper way, before returning to revisiting my business and revitalizing it to include the deaf doula services as well. So aside from the doula services, what I also do is, as you stated, is I am an independent facilitator. So I do trainings. I am contracted with a lot of different local organizations around the areas of systemic oppression, diversity and inclusion, cultural humility, code switching, and again, creative writing. So that's about the gist of it right now.
Awesome.
That's incredible.
That is awesome. Well, Yex, I am so thrilled that you have decided to be on our podcast. And because you're here, and because we know that a lot of people will be listening, I'm not going to take for granted that everybody knows what a debt doula is. So I'm going to ask you the very question. What is a debt doula?
Okay, so a death doula. Well, first and foremost, the word doula is it's Greek for woman who serves. So all of us serve in some capacity or another. And this is just the overarching title. And what a death doula specifically does is a death doula provides support to a family as a birth doula would, sometimes, depending on the circumstances, during end of life care, while somebody is known to be already terminally ill, in case of sudden death. And what the services look like is support during grief and bereavement. It looks like education around the areas of what end of life care looks like, what dying looks like, especially around our culture around how we look at death and dying, and people's perspective tends to come from a fear-based mindset. So trying to reshape what death looks like for us and how we embrace death as a part of life. So also educating families around end of life care. So this is what we're really wanting to talk about. The meat of this is getting your end of life affairs in order. And eventually, once you get through these, getting them in order, of course, the actual funeral arrangements or whatever kind of end of life arrangements that one desires. And that's pretty much the whole of what a death doula does. Okay. Advocacy always, in whatever realm that they can advocate, whether it is, with the funeral arrangements themselves, people more often than not don't realize this is a business, and this is a business that's always going to capitalize on what they, what the customers' needs are. So just helping people divert unnecessary costs and things like this.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for answering that question.
My mother-in-law passed away 2 years ago. Definitely needed your services then. It was extremely overwhelming,
yes,
to say the least. So I'm just excited that our audience gets to hear how important it is to have someone like you in their life, have that card in their pocketbook,
absolutely,
have that conversation ahead of time, get you on their radar so that you become that ultimate contact, because this is absolutely a phenomenal service.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So then how or where were you trained? And if, for instance, do you really have to have a certificate? Do you have a certificate? If someone didn't take a formal training program, how would they be able to get into something like this if they were interested in it? Do they have to be certified? How were you trained, and how are you certified to do this?
Okay, so as of now, I am not certified, and I have both spiritual and then more conservative beliefs about how people should go about, pursuing education and career fields and pathways. So again, when I got into it because of my mother's passing. And there are certifying agencies, and while there are certifying agencies, just like a birth doula, there are no governing agencies. So this means that a certification is not needed. A certification sometimes makes people feel comfortable. And I would say that somebody taking a course also empowers them with information. It's difficult to do all of the research on your own, and you can get it in one condensed compiled place. So I am actually in the process of that now. Yes. So I decided again to pursue this endeavor about a year ago, and began the journey in reinvigorating and rebranding my business at the start of this year. So yes, there is a certifying agency, but not a governing agency. And if somebody wanted to get into it, I would say, again, my spiritual point of view is that sometimes the universe endows us with positions and titles. We know this. This is like our niche. These are the things that we are naturally good at. Some people are just naturally good teachers or educators. And I encourage individuals who feel it in their who feel it in their spirit and their soul that it resonates with them. If this is something that you want to do, pursue it and empower yourself. We always have to be the driving force within ourselves to pursue the things that we want to pursue. So, but also, I like to support that foundation with a formal education and training also.
Okay, awesome. So then what is your own personal experience with death, dying, and loss?
Okay, so I used to often say at a younger age, like my family never really experienced any deaths. Like there was never any that kind of trauma and hardship in my experience. At the age of 22, maybe about 8 years ago, 23. My daughter was 6 years old, and her father was murdered in New Haven, Connecticut. So this is my first brush with death. And at that time, I wasn't endowed with the responsibility of handling his affairs. His mother was. But I was there for the entire process to be able to see what this looks like. And again, as you were saying, Cherie, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, especially if you've never been through it before. It's overwhelming, especially if it's sudden. And I watched his mom flick her wrist a lot of do whatever it costs, whatever we need to do because of that space of just being on adrenaline, going through the motions, not really being able to address the logistics of things because you're moving through your grief simultaneously. About 5 years, close to 5 years after the anniversary of his passing, his mother passed of heart failure. Again, as we were talking, Cherie, before we even approached, this podcast interview, was she didn't have her affairs in order. As a Black woman, she didn't expect to pass. When she passed, she was still young. She was 49 years old.
What?
49 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Heart failure. And her blood pressure, I'm sure, went through the roof because of her son's passing. And this is something that I also advocate heavily for when we talk about women in business, Black women in general, or women of color in general, is that whatever we call it, whatever the vicarious diagnosis is, whether it's cancer, whether it's an aneurysm, whether it's heart failure, we die from stress. We die from undue, unnecessary stress. And it is preventable. So this last February 2020, I saw my mom on Valentine's Day, and the next day my sister called me to let me know that she passed away. So it was very sudden. She was 53 years old. And fortunately, I was raised by a mother who was very realistic, and she planned for this. And she not only planned for this, she kind of fostered a healthy relationship with us and the idea of death at a very young age. So I'm one of 3 sisters, and my youngest sister, and how the baby is typically attached to the mother heavily, she used to cry all the time. She used to stay up at night, losing sleep, asking my mother what's going to happen when she dies. Is she still going to see her, meet her at a very young age? And my mother would always kind of, console her with the knowledge that we will always be connected with each other. And my mother used to drill things into our head. She was a very proud woman, and she used to tell us, don't you take up any collection from me when I pass. Don't you get a quarter from anybody. I have life insurance. And she beat this into our head constantly and consistently. But again, due to the lack of preparedness, they say procrastination is the enemy of end of life planning. Is due to this lack of preparation, of continuously maintaining her affairs, is that she stopped paying her premium 6 months before she passed. So I had to begin with even trying to navigate through all of her paperwork to figure out where the policy was in the first place. And this is why end of life arrangements are so important, because you bypass all of these hurdles, instead of having to dig and search and pull here and there for documents. People have this in one safe, in multiple places actually. And me and between my sisters and I, we ended up having to cover all of the costs out of pocket, which at the point when it's a loved one, you don't care. You're going to do what you have to do, but it is an inconvenience, and it is an inconvenience that can be averted. So that is pretty much my experience with death.
Okay. Because that's the other question that I was going to ask you. So you led right on into it, is if you think it would be a good idea to file your own, fill out your own end of life documents. It definitely sounds like the best thing to do, because at the end of death, you're going to be dealing with debt, and then you're going to be dealing with all the other issues that comes along with it if things are not in place.
Absolutely.
The heartache, the headache, if you don't have. So what's the process? What does that look like? How do you journey there?
Okay, so as you were saying, grief leaves most people paralyzed, and a lot of people don't realize it until they're in that space, how paralyzing grief is. And it makes it that much more difficult when you don't have these things in order, having to scramble to figure it out, to prioritize, to get the list in order. And for me, it was a learning experience. There's a saying that smart men learn from their own mistakes, but wise men learn from the mistakes of others. And because I went through the trial and error, I am better able to serve clients as a doula, because they don't have to make the mistakes that I made. And what that looked like, and not necessarily mistakes, but just such a strenuous process. And there are things that we don't naturally think of. I have a disabled brother who is actually older than me, who I needed to take guardianship of. I had to go to probate court. I had to, if you don't have end of life planning, the traditional way it would go, if you don't have a trustee of your estate, or an estate administrator is what they would call them now, is you would have to go to probate court. You would have to file a petition. You would have to put an ad in the newspaper. You would have to pay all of these fees just to get the ball rolling. Just to start off. But if somebody was proactive, and again, because my mother drilled these things into my head, and I had children at such a young age, I wrote my first living will when I was 18 years old. I had 3 children by the age of 19. So it was important for me, more than anything. At that age, I didn't have assets. I didn't have anything worth anything other than my kids, and me wanting to dictate who will take guardianship of them in case I passed. That was the most important thing to me, to know that they were together and that they were going to be raised in a healthy environment. So there is definitely a plan or a course of action that individuals can take to make sure that they have their affairs in order. And if one is proactive, then they're going to want to, despite what they feel like they don't have, is itemize their inventory. You're going to want to itemize all of the physical assets that you have. And you're going to want to, as you're taking inventory, is think about, or even catalog who you want these assets to go to. After itemizing your physical inventory, you're going to want to itemize your non-physical inventory, your non-tangible stuff, your 401ks, your IRAs, your insurance policies, all of these things. As you were saying, people are left with debt. You're going to want to list your debt. You want to list your debt so that we know what the course of action is, what type of agreements that you have with the collection agency, or whatever debt that you have. And it doesn't have to be actual debt, but you own a home, you finance a vehicle, whatever position that you're in, you're going to want whoever is entrusted with your estate to know all of these things, to have access to all of the information that they need, the policy numbers, and physical documents and where these documents are located so that they don't have to struggle to figure out where to find this paperwork at. Most people would want to keep 3 copies of everything, one with their self, on their physical, wherever they at, like in their house somewhere safe, one with the trustee of their estate, and one with either their spouse or in like a safe deposit box or somewhere that is listed that somebody can access it. Again, there are things that individuals don't think about, like listing your memberships, your subscriptions. I was getting calls from my mother had a vehicle financed, and they're trying to collect, and I am the her first contact person that she has listed for this. So I have to figure this stuff out. I have to decide, what am I going to do? Am I going to return her vehicle? Now this is a point of sentimental value. Now I'm paying off my mom's vehicle just to keep it because it was my mom's vehicle, and she had an appliance from like an appliance rental place. It was things that I wouldn't even think of that I had to figure out in that moment. People are going to want to constantly review these documents, just like they will review their retirement plans, keeping up-to-date insurance. Again, just like my mom. My mom beat it into her head that she was insured, and she was insured. She was insured, but it lapsed. The last 6 months, she let it fall apart, and it's so important. There are a lot of people who, especially in the communities that we come from, who are strapped when it comes time for funeral arrangements, and who cannot bury their family members. And we know way too often we see individuals. Now we're in an era where we have like the the GoFundMes, and but before we would see our people doing fish fries and selling dinners and having collection jars at the corner stores and the bodegas to acquire money. Also, something that I do with individuals who it is beyond their means is we allocate resources. There are churches, there are government programs, there are so many different programs around that supplement money for funeral arrangements. Sometimes when it's a child, the city, the locality will cover it completely, depending on the circumstances. So again, we try to educate our clientele about this. Individuals will want to. This is something you would include in your will, but sometimes certain assets have literal transfers on death. So something you would want to transfer, again, like if you have a vehicle finance, who is going to get this? Whose name is it going to be transferred into? Who's going to incur this? So this is called a transfer on death. And it is important. I mentioned the word or the title estate administrator or trustee of your estate, but what this is, is somebody who you trust will handle your affairs properly, the way that you desired, and will be, emotionally disciplined enough to execute it the way that you wish for it to be executed. As much in our grief as we are, we still have to gather ourselves to get done what needs to get done. And it was very difficult for me personally. My sisters kind of threw their hands up and were too emotional to do anything. So it was me the entire time. And I had to just, pull my bootstraps up and just get it done. And like, okay, I'm going to have a moment to deal with my emotions after all of this is done. I will get that moment to myself. This is also why the village is important. And as much as sometimes we feel disconnected or we don't feel that depth of community that we would wish, is that my tribe showed up when my mom passed away. And I mean individuals to take care of our kids, to cook dinner for a full week, to do all of these things for us, to help us make sure those cracks were filled while we were handling the bigger things. And after somebody selects a trustee for their estate, they're going to want to actually write their will. And depending on what somebody's assets look like and their business affairs, you can go anywhere from drawing up a will yourself online with some online software. They have like the Zoom Legal and these kinds of websites. And depending on how much somebody has, you also might want to visit an estate attorney, just like somebody would get a tax attorney, or any kind of support in that area. An estate attorney would be able to better handle these kinds of affairs.
So let me just interject a moment. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was saying that's pretty much the gist of the process somebody would go through.
This is a lot to digest, and I want to make sure that everyone listening understands, because there's some takeaways that just were some big aha moments for me, that I myself, someone who has life insurance, someone who has a will and estate, but I don't have this next step. I never thought about having all of this in place for my children that are 18 and older. And when you were saying that, I realized it's because we have life insurance for our children, and you don't need that when they're under the age of 18, because they're a part of your estate. You are their trustee, their guardian. But when they're 18, they're now on their own.
Yes.
I'm like, I wrote down I have 6 boys. The 4 who are 18 and over will be getting their will done. This is powerful information, because having gone through this, not once, but twice, with my mother and my mother-in-law, each time it's overwhelming, no matter where. There's just so many pieces. And I love how you're breaking it down step by step to really think about I love how you talked about the transfer of property, which is key, because a lot of people don't realize that their spouse didn't put things in place for them. They don't have things in place for their spouse. Next thing you know, no matter if you're married, if your name is not on that car, and it's not in the will, and he says that everything is for you, you have to then go through the means of another way around, getting attorneys, paying extra money, trying to figure out how to get all these items back into your possession.
And dealing with the potential contention is that the reality is that, as much as we would like to think the best, is that sometimes families fight. When there is nothing clear and set in stone, sometimes it creates contention and havoc.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That is so true. That's my other question to you, because we know that relatives can be difficult. I mean, actually, anyone going through loss can be emotional. I mean, even sometimes inappropriate, right?
Yes.
But how do you handle this? How would you react to someone if they snap at you? Or, not suggesting that you should take any booze, but how would you manage that situation? Because, it's all types of emotions running together. And so what do you do when people...
So outside of the doula work prior, as I was saying that I was an environmental educator, is what I specifically worked in the realm of an educator is trauma-informed care and restorative practices, nonviolent communication. So this is something that I'm skilled at, and I would hope that other death doulas or doulas in general are skilled at, is, again, like you said, not being able to take abuse, but being able to communicate effectively, and being able to have boundaries, hold those boundaries while being compassionate towards the circumstances, because, like you said, you understand that people's emotions are heightened. Anybody meeting, just like a chaplain would, people still have to remember their role. Right. And sometimes what that looks like is when individuals are heightened in emotion, is taking a step back, and allowing people to move through things on their own. Because what you can't do is force anybody's hand in any way. You can't say, well, this is best for you, and you don't realize what's best for you right now because you're emotional, or get emotional in return. We know that no matter how something provokes us as professionals, we have to maintain our professionalism. And and I would say that sometimes when it gets difficult between family members, there are ways to curb instances of contention that put me in an uncomfortable place. So what I would do, for instance, is I would empower whoever I'm directly dealing with, just like I would empower a mom and a father during pregnancy and childbirth, is that when you feel overwhelmed, tell people that you need your space. There's a trick that we use: ask people for a moment to pray, and people will leave you alone. So we will empower people with tools on what to do. If you feel overwhelmed, you need some space, people not give you space, tell them you need a minute to pray. They'll give you that. That always works. People are always going to give you space, even if you don't pray. Take your moment and be able to sit in whatever decision or feelings or whatever's going on that you need to do to move forward.
Right. Wonderful.
That's genius. People do. People
Totally.
will. They'll back off on that.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, I have about 2 other questions for you. The question I want to ask you, and I'm just curious to know, have you ever spent time with a dying client?
Absolutely. Actually, my first time with and not I misspoke, not a client, but and not in the capacity of a death doula. I remember, and these were things that I think catalyzed my trajectory, was about 11, 12 years ago. When I was like 18 years old, I got certified as a CNA. And my first patients, my first few nights on the job, were 2 women who were on very end of life care, like literally just comfort and nothing else is happening. No intake, no output. They're just literally waiting on them to pass. And the nurses were extremely insensitive. And it made me, again, propelled me to want to get into this realm of advocacy of like, how dare you speak of somebody's dying family member, a person like this, as if they're not deserving of respect, just because they can't advocate for themselves, and being a voice for the voiceless. So those were my my only experience at the very beginning of like my career.
Okay. And so my final question for you, I remember you saying in the beginning that you were also a birth doula. Do you still do birth?
Yes, I do birth doula, but birth doula work, I would say, is very difficult in the realm that the target audience or the target clientele that I am looking for is not necessarily who is looking for me. The women who are already affluent, who are already wealthy, who are already educated, who already are in the trajectory to have better health outcomes, already seeking out doulas and midwives, and baby nurses. I'm looking for the women who are underserved. I am looking for the impoverished, the marginalized, the disparaged against, the women in communities where they are low income and single parent households, lack of education. And it's difficult to even raise awareness and get people to take notice of a need that they have when they're focused on survival. So it does come, but it comes few and far in between. And the work that I do specifically, and also a lot of women are turned off. I won't say a lot of women. I will say, from my experience, I see women who are my target clientele turned off by the service because they think it's unaffordable. Because most doulas do have a high standard rate, and they think it's without their reach, so they don't even think about it. And this is a place where poor people, and this is why poverty is an illness, is why poor people resign themselves to certain places because they think that they can't even fathom it. So why even look? Why even try? And my services personally are go off of a sliding scale fee, so people pay what they can afford with me.
Okay, perfect. Oh my gosh.
Exciting.
You are amazing.
Thank you
I
so
have
much.
learned so many things today. I'm like, yes, I need to get some stuff in order. I really do. This is good information. This is really, really great information. And I'm so thankful for you being here with us today just to, educate us because really and truly we do need to put some stuff in order and not wait until the appointed time.
Absolutely.
Then we're rushing to, go through all the headache, the heartache, the pain, addition to the loss of your loved ones.
Yes.
So it makes sense that you prepare ahead of time. Um, I mean, it is difficult conversations to have. You know what? I want to ask you that kind of question, because how do you have that type of conversation? How do you break it down with your individual spouse or loved one, that this is a conversation that needs to be open, that needs to be addressed, should in case, just in case this thing's, the inevitable happens, what do you do, right?
I think that this is something that Cherie and I talked about briefly during our first discussion was how people, just in general, in all areas, don't vet properly. And, you know, um, you have to plan, for the unexpected. Like we have to plan. People I feel spend so much time worrying about probabilities and don't spend any time planning for these probabilities that they conjure up in their mind. And if they are there, it's like, why not create an action plan for these things? I have 4 children. I have had 4 C-sections. When me and my significant other discuss potential children, we talk about what this looks like if things go awry. What
Mhm.
what choice are you going to make? And people don't make these kinds of choices, and then they're stuck and they're overwhelmed in these moments when all you have to do is sit down. Courageous conversation is very difficult to have. It is something that we have not been conditioned.
You're going out. Yes. You stopped that. You have not been conditioned.
Life partners who they're going to have children with.
Go back over. You blanked out. You said you have not been. You have not. You've been in the. You're not in the position. You have not been positioned to.
Have these conversations.
Yeah, to have these conversations.
Oh yes, like a lot of us haven't been, raised having these conversations, and courageous conversation is difficult, but it is necessary. And I do feel like a lot of people do not have these conversations around areas of importance that cause contention within our lives. People don't have discussions about how they want to raise their kids and what kind of partner that they see, what kind of life that they see. They just move on emotion, on pulse, on faith, on anything, and they take a leap and they live like that, in that thrilling space. And it is said that humans like drama. This is why people like entertainment. They like drama shows and they like all of these things. And it sometimes it penetrates so deeply. People create drama in their life. They will pay their bills late when they know that all you have to do is pay them on time, and it will create this buildup. And it's odd, but it's real. It happens. So it's like, it is difficult, and this is why deaf doulas are needed, or even individuals, just to talk about these things so that people know to even have the conversation. Because if somebody was never raised talking about death, a lot of people are raised to fear the conversation about death. And this is why people avoid it. It is taboo. And that moves me into something that I did want to talk about, which again was reshaping how we look at death. Instead of being so fearful of one of the only things that is promised to us in life, if we embrace the fact that it's less of death, without trying to impose on anybody's religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs, that it is less of death and more of afterlife. We transition. And if we remove the fear-based mindset, and we break down those barriers, people will feel more comfortable being able to have discussions.
Perfect.
Definitely. This is juicy. You guys, this is powerful. I mean, as you're talking, I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, I spend my time preparing my kids to go to college. I spend my time preparing them to be financially responsible. I spend my time teaching them how to be a responsible citizen in this world, and making sure that they, are loving human beings,
Yep.
and, having an impact on the world. But I never prepare them for that day. We don't even discuss it. I'm so guilty of that. We don't even discuss that. They're aware of it. They've seen it because they've had people close to us pass away, but they themselves, we have not had that conversation. And I tell you, in the Dunn household, we will be having that conversation.
Yes.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Absolutely. And then we'll find ourselves in positions, because we have never been familiar with these things, that we don't even realize some of the smallest nuances. I remember when my daughter lost her father, I did the best that I can do with the knowledge base that I had, and I love to read. Go to the library, try to find some books that are her age appropriate about death and explaining death. And one of the first bits of advice that I got is, we hear people pass on phrases, notions, things that are not necessarily healthy around death. And I remember one of the first bits of advice that I got, somebody said, don't tell her that he's sleeping. People often tell children that somebody is sleeping, and then children will develop trauma around sleep and death and a relationship and what that looks like for them. So having these discussions so that we normalize what is normal and natural, and explain to our kids, one day I'm not going to be here. The most likely the natural order is that as your parent, I will pass before you, and here's what it shall look like. And you will be sorrowful, and you will grieve, and you will be sad. You will miss the physical connection, but you don't have to live in that space. Not just empowering people logistically and with their state, but also with their emotions and their grief and their self. Just like I was saying, as Black women die from cancer at high rates, or die from stress vicariously, is I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, it's true though. As women of color, we do die at alarming rates because of stress.
Absolutely.
And a lot of it has to do with not being prepared. Let's face it.
Absolutely.
Behind the 8 ball, and it's time to get in the game.
Absolutely.
And this is how we can do it. This has been juicy. So, are you going to leave us a little treat with some spoken word? We can't hear you. Right as the good part. Now you're there.
Oh, no. There you go.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so this piece is an open letter to my daughter, and it doesn't it's not exactly in line with like end of life and funeral arrangements, but more so just the barriers and the hurdles that we face as women of color in this nation. Okay. I read an article the other day about a Black toddler named Darnell Gray that had gone missing, during which the local police department justified why he wasn't worthy of an Amber Alert. This is an open letter to my daughter. Dear Syra, I should have named you Amber just in case. I should have named you Amber because Black children always fit the description but never the criteria. God forbid you disappear. Maybe they'd be as quick to put your face on the back of chocolate milk cartons as they are when they place you in handcuffs, or in cop cars, or in jail cells, or in graveyards, or in boxes with check marks that they use to marginalize, stained black ink on white paper with no drawn lines. I should have named you Amber because a ghetto-sounding name could be the link between what distinguishes one as missing versus a runaway. White children go missing, slaves run away, Black boys can't whistle, white girls tell white lies, Jim Crow got your tongue while George Stinney fries. I should have named you Amber so that when you speak, you don't have to repeat yourself. Sorry to bother. It's Syra, not Cyrus. Sorry to bother. It's Sergi, not Sarah. Spirit of forefathers. It was Kunta, never Toby. Syra. Psi like science, like the only back that matters to them, the one in outer space. Psi like science, if only they'd realize the carbon copied galaxy freckled upon your face. Ra like sun god. See, I should have named you Amber, but I named you Syra instead because I knew your locks would begin where namesake ends, and if I would have named you Amber, they would have renamed you Medusa. They dread little black girls with magical powers, like Latasha Harlins and Ayanna Jones and India Kager and Neil Wilson and Sandra Parks and Bland. Oh, children of the ghetto, you should have all been named Amber because they're white physicians without borders or boundaries or morals or humanity, butchering black names and black babies. Melanin still goes for $3.50 a gram. Do it for the gram. I ain't gonna do it. Don't do it. It's a sham. You've been bamboozled. Worth more dead than alive. Hoodwinked. I should have named you Amber so that when you interview for positions, you don't feel a need to straighten out your kinks. And when you show up for work, you can really arrive because shrinking yourself to fit European beauty standards can kill you spiritually inside. Maybe I shouldn't have named you Amber. Maybe I should have named you A, B, C, D, E, so the entire world knows you come first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, and not just a fraction of that. And you wouldn't have to unscrew caps on fifths of Hennessy to look for fractured fragments of yourself because your biggest riff with life is TSA making fun of your name. Shoot, even I can pronounce it. Absidy, hands up, don't shoot. The caucasity of you to judge them by their names. I should have named you Amber, but you are much more precious than a stone. Thank you.
Wow. I have chills.
Thank you.
It's beautiful.
I'm just trying to fight back the emotions. Oh, that was wow.
Yes, that piece is definitely near and dear to me. And I was literally reading an article about a young black toddler who had gone missing, and we know more often than not the disparities that we have to face, but when it's in your face, it feels different. And this article is explaining why they're not giving this little black boy an Amber Alert, but we know we don't get Amber Alerts often. We get silver alerts and no alerts, and they're runaways and whatever the case may be. And this is what inspired this piece.
Wow, that was amazing.
As you can see, you guys, this is the year of the Black woman, the year of the Latina woman, the year of the Native woman, the year of the colored woman, because we are so intelligent. We have so much to give within.
Yes.
All we need is the platform to stand,
let our voice be heard,
in our power to deliver. And we will ensure that this world is left better than we found it.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. Thank you so much for being on with us today. Yes, we've had so much fun. You have literally given us so many nuggets. I'm like sitting here typing a family chat. We'll be having a family meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
My affairs in order.
It was a pleasure.
And it's interesting. I wonder, when all people watch and listen to this, how many of them have their affairs in order?
I hope if they don't, they will.
Yeah. So tell everyone how they can reach you, because I'm sure they're going to have some questions and would love to get in touch with you, and so that they can get their affairs in order.
Absolutely. So my IG handle is Yex. That's YASSS, 3 S's, _Yex, YEX. My Facebook is my actual name. It is Yexandra Diaz. That is YEXANDRA. Last name DIAZ. And then my email address, if anybody wants to contact me directly through email, is atabeysdoula@gmail.com. So that is atabeysdoula@gmail.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate it so much. This was so lovely.
You're welcome. Nyoka, please tell everyone who you are.
My name is Nyoka Wright Smith, president of NAWS Coaching and Consulting LLC, and I am a business wealth expert. I help my clients by empowering them with the knowledge, the skills, the guidance, and recommendation they need to help them build wealth. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our podcast where we keep it real, where we keep it live, where we keep it current, and where we keep it flowing. We appreciate every single one of you for listening in on our podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, tell the world about it because this is the year of the Black woman. What about you, Cherie? Tell us a little bit about you.
I'm Cherie Griffith Dunn, your expert business growth coach, motivational speaker, and #1 best-selling author, and #1 best-selling international author. I'm also founder and CEO of High Performing Women Academy, the place where you belong. We are now accepting applications. Please go to hpwacademy.com. I'm your gluten-free foodie, mom of 6 kids, married to the love of my life, and obsessed with traveling. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please be sure to subscribe and check the box so that you can get notified for our next podcast. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
This has been another episode of the Six Figure Chick podcast. Please be sure to join us next time for some more hard-hitting career and business advice. To stay connected, follow me on Instagram at Cherie Griffith Dunn. And if you would like to be a part of the baddest club around, join High Performing Women Academy, the place where you belong. Go to hpwacademy.com. And as always, if you like what you hear, come back and next time, bring a friend. If you're interested in sponsoring, donating, or even advertising your business with me, please contact me at connect@CherieGriffithDunn.com.